Imagine you walk into a vast, open, hand-sculpted cavern. The light is at dawn. The wall holds a kind of sculpting that you've never seen, somewhere between the cave and a cathedral. As you walk forward, the sun rises. By the time you've crossed the space, it's noon. By the time you turn around, it's dusk. The light moves in and out of the porous walls, bleeding onto the floor. This building is one that could only exist in a dream. This is Gloam. Let me tell you about it. I'm Samuel Arsenault-Brassard, a VR architect and sculptor from Montreal. I've been doing VR architecture and art for over 10 years, since the Oculus Rift DK2 came out. You're going to find a lot of evolutions on the thoughts of Louis Kahn and James Turrell in here. Ways to dematerialize the body, ways to use the sun and matter to direct lighting. Here's a few pieces from my career. Salvo was the first piece I presented in a gallery. I also created the architecture for the Museum of Other Realities and worked closely with the co-founders to create a new type of space. Some more local examples are the SAT Hub in Montreal, where I was creative director for the lobby room and the conference room. There's also lots of other works that I've done in the past with virtual reality and augmented reality. I've also curated 12 different VR and AR art shows at Arsenault in Montreal. Now back to Gloam. It's really been a project 4 years in the making. Gloam builds on my history of creating futuristic, speculative digital architecture and then filling it with VR art. But this time something different happens. Instead of creating a simple space and filling it with complex art, I inverted the equation. I sculpted the entire surface of the architecture so that the art and the architecture would be merged together. And continuing my earlier tradition of making surfaces that accommodate and direct lighting, I created the surfaces in the porosity of Gloam so that it would be a machine for light, not a subject matter, but the entire skin of the building itself. We'll take a moment to step back and look at some of the bigger decisions in this design. First, Gloam is entirely sculpted by hand in VR. This is about a year's work, evenings and weekends after work, going back, slipping into a corner, melting into it, and evolving it as much as I could. Big moves and little moves interacting between the micro and the macro. A series of abstract ornamentation that discuss the shapes of virtual space, little flaps, little pieces of skin to receive, divert, split, to create currents of lighting. The creation of art within VR is probably one of the most radical aspects of VR art. The act of creation is completely transformed. The architect, the artist, becomes a god who manipulates the entire world at the snap of a finger. The friction between the ideas in the mind of the artist and its representation comes out with less friction. Unlike the reality of clay, metal, wood, paint, this matter obeys. The digital matter is sculpted, it stays. It's really the perfect medium in a way. It's a new era of materiality. It's temporarily eternal. This concept of dancing and tracing our feelings, this is what I call digital craftsmanship. It's the difference between hours and hours of work by human hand. This idea of a dance frozen in space, creating different forms than what would be crafted with a mouse and a keyboard on a flat screen. There's a second pillar to this design, which is the lighting. In my previous work, I've always frozen a single moment in time, a moment where the light hits the architecture and the art in a particular way, where a slit of lighting will glide across the floor and spill onto the wall. But in Gloam, I wanted to go further, much further. I wanted the entire solar animation of the space inside of virtual reality. It's easy to create an animation, but to create an animation in virtual reality at this level of lighting quality is entirely different. And the reason you may have noticed already is because I don't use regular lighting technology from gaming engines like Unity or Unreal. I use what's called baked lighting. And baked lighting is a technique that allows you to attain the creamiest, softest, most accurate light possible. And specifically, it's the only one that will allow you to explore chiaroscuro, or really accurate dark lighting, which is, as you've probably noticed, my entire field of interest. The darkness gives the light its drama, its power, and it's what gives it the phenomenological weight in virtual reality. Let me explain what this involves quickly. Instead of the computer calculating 60 times per second what goes on behind the image and using a lot of power for it, we basically scalp the entire model. We unwrap the surfaces of the model like peeling a grape, and we lay it out flat. And we look at each part of the surface and ask ourselves, what would happen to the lighting here? Like really ask ourselves, take the time, hundreds, millions of photons bouncing around in a theory. And for high quality, we need lots of pixels. So this scene has 20 images of about 8,000 pixels each, and there's 800 frames in this animation. And realistically, there's these fields of light, this bouquet that evolves through the day. There's 20 hidden paintings behind this project of the unwrapped surfaces. And finally, after years of sculpting and years of rendering, we put it all together in one package, and we can finally see what the space does and why I built it this way. So by playing with a lot of parameter, I was able to create an extremely geometric complex space with some of the best lighting you could possibly have, similar to the quality of a photo or a painting. And now we can have the space be animated by solar lighting, or at least the idea of it. So why go through all this effort? And this has to do with the legitimacy of virtual spaces, of digital spaces, how we can extend them beyond just a piece of architecture with some art inside. And part of that legitimacy has to do with complexity, with changes, with relationships. In the real world, we have birds, winds, clouds, the environment. The world is slipping in and out of us at every moment. And the same thing happens to the spaces we inhabit. So when we bring sunlight into the equation, it doesn't just animate this playing light box. It creates a space that can be revisited, a little bit like a temple. And I love the idea that visitors could come see the sunrise in the morning, the sun at noon, the setting sun, the golden hours, that people would visit it like a park for different reasons at different times. And it's really the first layer of complexity that we want to add to it, but it's an important one. The sun ties us in a subconscious way to the earth, to our bodies. It touches something subconscious in us, our relationship with time, with the universe. The sun anchors our reality more than any other kind of light. Now that you know why I care so much about light and spaces, and what we can do with spaces, I hope it helps you understand what I'm building these contemplative spaces for, to create an atmosphere of holiness, perhaps mindful introversion, a meditative space, a moment between opening and closing our eyes, where things get soft and only get softer. Thank you.